Zaravel stood before the mirror in her ceremonial chamber, her studding. Her own reflection, her lavender skin, glowed softly under the lights, and her silver hair fell past her shoulders like water. She was beautiful by Valari standards. She was also terrified. Today she would marry a human. The union had been arranged by her father, a high diplomat of the Valari Dominion. Earth needed allies among the older species of the galaxy. The Valari needed human military support against threats from the Outer Rim. A marriage between their peoples would seal the alliance and show the galaxy that cooperation was possible. Zaravel had agreed because duty demanded it. She had not expected to feel anything for the human they chose for her. His name was Daniel Price. He was 34 years old, a former cargo hauler from a place called Kansas. On Earth, his file described him as unremarkable in every way, average height, brown hair, brown eyes, no family of importance, no wealth, no special skills beyond operating transport ships. Thought she had wondered why Earth would send such an ordinary man for such an important union. Her advisors told her it was a sign of respect. Humans valued humility. They did not want to appear aggressive by sending a warrior or a politician. Zaravel accepted this explanation, but something about it felt wrong. The wedding took place on Concordia Prime, neutral station floating in the space between Earth's territory and the Valari Dominion. Thousands of guests filled the Great Hall. Diplomats and nobles and journalists from 100 worlds watched as Zaravel walked down the aisle toward her future husband. Daniel stood waiting for her at the altar. He wore simple black suit, which was apparently traditional for human males at weddings. He looked small to the aerial surrounding him. Zaravel stood 7 ft tall. Daniel barely reached her shoulder. When she reached him, he looked up at her and smiled. It was a kind smile, but there was something hidden behind his eyes, something she could not read. "You look beautiful," he said through his translator device. "Thank you," she replied. "You look adequate." He laughed. It was a warm sound, and Zaravel found herself surprised by how much she liked it. The ceremony was long and complicated. The Lari traditions mixed awkwardly with human customs. There were vows in 3 languages, rituals involving fire and water and starlight. Daniel performed each one carefully, having clearly studied them beforehand. He made only small mistakes. When it was over, they were husband and wife. The first months of their marriage were difficult. They lived on a space station designed for both species, with gravity and atmosphere adjustable for each of them. Zaravel spent most of her time feeling sick as her body adjusted to the slightly heavier gravity. Daniel preferred he was patient with her when she could not eat the food prepared by their staff. He learned to cook Valari dishes himself. When she grew homesick for the singing gardens of her home world, he found recordings of Valari music and played them throughout their quarters. When she could not sleep because the darkness frightened her, he installed soft lights that mimicked the bioluminescent flowers of her childhood home. "Why do you do these things?" she asked him one night. "Because you're my wife," he said simply, "and I want you to be happy." She did not know how to respond to this. Among the Valari, marriages were arrangements of convenience. Affection was rare and never expected. But Daniel seemed to genuinely care about her comfort. Over time, she began to care about his as well. She learned that he liked to watch old films from Earth, stories about heroes and adventures, and something called the underdog. She learned that he ate too much and slept too often, which seemed to be common among humans. She learned that he found great joy in simple things, a good meal, a funny joke, the sight of stars through their window, but she also noticed things that did not fit. Daniel moved too quietly for a cargo hauler. His footsteps made almost no sound, even on metal floors. When they walked through crowded areas, his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, tracking every movement. His reflexes were sharp, too sharp. One evening, they visited a market on the station to purchase supplies. A Koraki trader, drunk on fermented nectar, stumbled into Zarval and sent her crashing into a display of goods. Before she could even understand what had happened, Daniel had the trader pinned to the ground, his arm twisted at a painful angle. "Apologize to my wife," Daniel said. His voice was calm, but something dangerous lurked beneath it. The trader apologized. Daniel released him and helped Zarl to her feet as if nothing unusual had occurred. "You move very fast," she said. As they walked home, "Reflexes," he replied. "Come from working on cargo ships, lots of accidents in that line of work." She did not believe him. That night she watched him sleep. His face was peaceful, soft. He looked harmless. He looked ordinary, but Zaravel had seen something else in that market. Just for a moment she had seen a predator. The next morning she searched through his personal files while he showered. She found nothing unusual. His work history was complete and verified. His medical records showed no military training, no combat experience. Everything pointed to exactly what he claimed to be: a simple man from a simple place, chosen for a political marriage because he had no important connections that might complicate things. But Zaravel could not shake the feeling that she was missing something. "You're staring at me." Daniel sent over breakfast. "I am trying to understand you," she admitted. He smiled, that quiet smile of his. "I'm not that complicated. I'm just a guy who got lucky enough to marry the most beautiful woman in the galaxy." She felt her skin flush at the compliment. "Flattery will not distract me." "Worth a try." He reached across the table and took her hand. His fingers were warm against her cool skin. "I know this is strange for you. I know I'm not what you expected, but I promise you, Zaravel, I will never let anything hurt you, no matter what." There was something in his voice when he said it. A weight, a certainty. He was not making a casual promise. He was making a vow. She believed him. She did not understand why, but she believed him. "You are a strange creature, Daniel Price," she said. "All humans are strange," he replied. "You'll get used to it." She was beginning to think she might never get used to him. Every time she thought she understood her husband, he revealed something new, something unexpected. She had married a mystery wrapped in ordinary clothes, and despite her training, despite her intelligence, she could not solve him. But she was starting to think that she wanted to spend the rest of her life trying. 3 years passed and Zarl found herself falling in love with her husband. It happened slowly, in small moments. The way he laughed at his own jokes, the way he held her hand during thunderstorms because he knew the sound frightened her, the way he looked at her when he thought she was not watching, as if she were the most precious thing in the universe. She had stopped searching for his secrets. whatever Daniel had been before there. Marriage no longer mattered to her. He was kind, he was gentle, he was hers. For their 3rd anniversary, her father gifted them a vacation to Serenity's Edge, a resort world famous across the galaxy for its beauty. The planet was covered in crystal forests and golden oceans with 3 moons that painted the night sky in shades of pink and purple. "This is incredible," Daniel said as their shuttle descended through the clouds. Zaravel smiled at the wonder. His voice, despite everything he had seen in his travels, despite all the worlds he had visited as a cargo hauler, he still found joy in new experiences. It was one of the things she loved most about him. Their resort was a collection of floating villas above a calm sea. Each villa was connected by bridges of woven light. Servants waited on them, constantly bringing food and drinks and anything else they desired. It was paradise. For 3 days they did nothing but relax. They swam in the warm waters. They watched the sunsets. They lay in bed and talked about their future, about the children they might have someday, about growing old together. On the 4th night the scourge came. Zaravel woke to the sound of screaming. Red light flooded their villa as alarms blared across the resort. Through the window she could see fire rising from the other villas. Ships filled the sky, dark shapes that blocked out the moons. "Daniel," she gasped, shaking her husband. Awake, he was already moving before his eyes fully opened. In one smooth motion, he rolled out of bed, grabbed her arm, and pulled her toward the back of the villa. "Stay here," he said. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." "What are you doing, Daniel? What is happening?" "Scour," he replied. His voice was different now, colder, flatter. All the warmth had drained from his eyes. "They're harvesting the resort. I need to stop them." "You cannot stop them alone. You're just a cargo hauler." He looked at her then, and she saw something she had never seen before. Behind the mask of the ordinary man she had married, something else was staring out, something old and hard and terrifying. "Stay here," he repeated, and then he was gone. Zaravel did not stay. She could not. Her husband was out there, facing monsters, and she needed to know the truth. She needed to see what he really was. She followed the sounds of chaos through the burning resort. Bodies lay everywhere. Some were guests, some were servants, some were scourge. The alien raiders were nightmares made flesh, chitinous creatures with too many limbs and jaws that could bite through steel. She found Daniel in the central plaza. He had somehow acquired a plasma cutter, a tool used for maintenance work. In his hands it became something else entirely. He moved through the scourge like water through rocks, flowing around their attacks, striking at joints and weak points with surgical precision. A scourge warrior lunged at him. Daniel's city stepped, drove the plasma cutter through its throat and kicked the dying creature into another attacker. 2 more rushed him from behind. He seemed to sense them. Without looking, spinning to meet their charge, his weapon blazing. Zaravel had seen Valari warriors train. She had watched combat demonstrations by a dozen different species. None of them moved like Daniel moved. He was not fighting. He was performing, executing a dance he had practiced 1,000 times until it became as natural as breathing. Scourge Alpha emerged from the smoke. It was massive, nearly 9 ft tall, covered in armor like plates. Its claws were longer than Zaravel's arms. It roared A challenge that shook the ground. Daniel did not retreat, he ran toward it. The Alpha swung. Daniel dropped into a slide passing beneath its arm, slashing at the back of its knee as he went. The creature stumbled. Daniel was already rising, already moving, striking the joints where the armor plates met. The Alpha turned, but it was too slow. Daniel climbed its body like a ladder, found the soft spot at the base of its skull, and drove his weapon deep. The Alpha fell. Daniel rode it down, landing in a crouch among its corpse. Around him lay 17 scourge bodies. He stood slowly, covered in their green his chest heaved with exertion. Blood ran from a wound on his forehead, but he did not seem to notice, and his eyes found Zarville, and for a moment neither of them moved. "You followed me," he said. "You lied to me," she replied. He did not deny it, he just stood there waiting as the resort burned. Around them, other survivors began to emerge from hiding. They stared at Daniel with a mixture of fear and awe. Human woman was crying. Ari child clung to its mother. They had all witnessed what he had done. "What are you?" Zarville asked. Before Daniel could answer, rescue ships appeared in the sky. The Ari military vessels responding to the distress signal. Soldiers poured out, securing the area, tending to the wounded. A Val Ari commander approached. "Daniel, you did this?" he asked, gesturing at the dead scourge. "Yes," Daniel said. The commander studied him for a long moment. "You are no cargo hauler." "No, I am not." The commander nodded slowly. "We will have questions for you, I know." Zarville watched as her husband was led away by the soldiers. He did not resist. He did not explain. He just went with them, his shoulders heavy with a weight she was only beginning to understand. She had married an ordinary man, or so she had believed. Now she stood in the ruins of paradise, surrounded by the bodies of monsters her husband had killed with his bare hands and a maintenance tool, and she did not know what to believe anymore. The man she loved was a stranger, the gentle soul who cooked her breakfast and held her through nightmares was also a killer of terrible skill. Both things were true at the same time. She thought about their 3 years together, every kiss, every laugh, every quiet moment in the dark. Had any of it been real? She needed to know. She needed to understand. But as she watched him disappear into the rescue ship, she realized she was afraid of what the answers might be. The evacuation cruiser was cold and sterile. Zarville sat in a medical bay while doctors checked her for injuries. She had none. Her husband had made sure of that. Daniel was being held in a separate section of the ship, questioned by Valari intelligence officers. She had not seen him since the rescue. She did not know if she wanted to. For hours she replayed the events in her mind, the way he moved, the look in his eyes, the absolute calm with which he had killed. This was not a man who had learned to fight out of necessity. This was someone who had been forged into a weapon. When the questioning was over, they allowed her to see him. He sat alone in a small room, his hand resting on a metal table. The wound on his forehead had been treated. Someone had given him clean clothes. He looked almost normal again, almost like the man she had married. "Almost, Zarville," he said when she entered. His voice was soft, uncertain. He was afraid too, she realized, afraid of her. She sat across from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Tell me everything," she finally said. "No more lies, no more secrets. I need To know who you really are, Daniel closed his eyes when he opened them. Again the mask was gone, she was seeing him truly for the first time. I was born in Kansas, he began that part. Is true, my parents were farmers, normal people. I had a normal childhood until I was 8 years old. What happened when you were 8? Earth's government came to our farm. They told my parents I had tested positive for certain genetic markers that made me a candidate for a program they were developing. My parents refused at first, but the government offered them money, a lot of money, and promised I would be taken care of. We were poor. They did not have much choice. Zaravel felt something cold settle in her chest. What kind of program? After first contact, Earth realized how vulnerable we were. Humans were physically weak compared to most species. Our technology was primitive. If any of the major powers decided to conquer us, we would not be able to stop them, so they created a secret project to develop soldiers who could fight on equal terms with any species in the galaxy. They trained children to be weapons. Yes, Daniel's voice was steady, but she could see the pain behind his eyes. They called us the quiet ones. 200 children taken from our families, raised in isolation. We were trained from the moment we woke until the moment we slept. Combat strategy, infiltration, languages, everything they thought we might need. How long? Until we were 18. 10 years of training. Then they deployed us across the galaxy, placing us in positions where we could gather intelligence and respond to threats. Before they reached Earth, Zaravel struggled to process this information. Her husband had been stolen from his family as a child and turned into an assassin by his own government. The gentle man who burned toast and laughed at silly films had spent his childhood learning 100 ways to kill. Our marriage, she said slowly, was it part of your mission? Daniel hesitated. That pause told her everything she needed to know. At first, yes, he admitted. Earth wanted someone inside the Valari Dominion. Your father's position made you a valuable target. I was assigned to marry you, gain your trust, and report on Valari military capabilities. The words struck her like physical blows. 3 years of love, of tenderness, of building a life together, and all of it had begun as a lie. I see, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But that changed, Daniel said quickly, reaching across the table. She pulled her hands away. Zaravel, please listen to me. The mission ended the night of our third date. Do you remember that night? She remembered. They had eaten at a small restaurant on the station. She had tried to eat spaghetti with her fingers because she had read somewhere that humans ate with their hands. Daniel had laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair, and then he had gently shown her how to use a fork. That night I sent a message to my handlers. Daniel continued. I told them I could not complete the mission. I told them I was in love with you and would not betray you. I offered to accept any punishment they wanted to give me. And what did they say? They told me to stay. They said a genuine marriage was even more valuable than a spy. They said as long as I remained with you, they were satisfied. He paused. I have sent them nothing since then. No reports, no intelligence, nothing. Everything between us for the past 3 years has been real. Zaravel wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly that it hurt. But how could she trust anything he said now? How could she know what was real and what was another layer of lies? The Other quiet ones, she said, where are they now? Most are dead, some from mission, some from the training itself. Some could not live with what they had become and chose to end their own lives. Of the original 200, maybe 40 are still alive. And you, how have you survived? Daniel looked at her with eyes full of sorrow. I found something worth living. For I found you. She stood abruptly. Unable to sit any longer, she paced the small room, her mind racing. Everything she thought she knew about her husband had been shattered. The foundation of their marriage was built on deception. But was that the whole truth? She thought about the past 3 years. The way Daniel looked at her every morning, as if seeing her was the best part of his day. The way he held her when she cried. The way he learned her culture, her language, her customs, not because his mission required it, but because he wanted to understand her. Could all of that have been fake? Could anyone maintain such a perfect act for so long? I need time, she said finally. I cannot simply forget what you have told me. I cannot pretend that everything is fine. I understand, Daniel said, his voice cracked slightly. What will you do? I am going home to my family. I need to think about what this means, about what we are. Now Daniel nodded. He did not argue. He did not beg. He simply accepted her decision as he had accepted everything else. I love you, Zaravel, he said as she walked toward the door. That has never been a lie, whatever you decide. Please know that. She paused with her hand on the door. She did not turn around. I wish I could believe you, she said. And then she left. For 6 months she stayed on the Valeri home world. She ignored Daniel's messages. She refused his calls. She threw herself into work, into family obligations, into anything that would stop her from thinking about him, but she could not stop. Every night she dreamed of him. Every morning she woke reaching for someone who was not there. Her family urged her to end the marriage. Her friends told her she deserved better. But none of them had seen what she had seen on Serenity's edge. None of them knew what Daniel had done to protect those people. None of them understood that the monster and the man were the same person, and that person loved her. 6 months of silence, 6 months of pain. And then the scourge came again, and everything changed. The space station Vareth Prime floated in the darkness between 3-star systems. It was a massive structure built by the Galactic Combat Coalition over 2,000 years ago. Every year the strongest warrior species in the known galaxy gathered here for the Warrior Summit. They came to show their power. They came to prove they were the best. Commander Nia Kresh stood near in the main observation window, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. She was Cethani, a reptilian species known throughout the Coalition for their brutal strength. She stood over 8 feet tall, her green scales thick as armor, her claws capable of tearing through metal. The Symphony had won more combat tournaments than any other species in Coalition history. Nia had personally killed 17 enemies in ritual combat. She feared nothing. The docking bay filled with vessels from dozens of worlds. Veli arrived in their silver ships, 4 armed insectoids who moved faster than the eye could track. The Thornaki came in massive transports, their silicon-based bodies weighing several tons each. They were living mountains, nearly impossible to damage. The Morith slithered from their vessels, serpentine creatures whose venom could kill in seconds. Every species here had evolved to be perfect killing machines. Nia noticed a small ship approaching the station. It was unremarkable, gray and functional, bearing the symbol of a species that had only recently joined the coalition. Humans, she had read the reports about them. They came from a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. They had only achieved faster than light travel within the last 100 years. In galactic terms, they were infants. The human ship docked at the lower levels, far from the prestigious bays reserved for established warrior species. Nia thought this was appropriate. Humans had no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no venom, no armor. They were soft, fragile creatures who lived for less than a century. The coalition had accepted them only because their territory sat near important trade routes. Nobody expected them to contribute anything meaningful to the warrior summit. A Veli scout named Churix approached Nia. His forearms moved constantly, a sign of excitement in the species. Commander, have you seen the human delegation? Nia turned her massive head slowly. I saw their ship, small, unimpressive. There are only 7 of them, Turk said. 1 commander and 6 soldiers. They brought almost no equipment, just personal weapons and some training gear. 7. Nia made a sound that passed for laughter among the Krenian. Thornaki brought 300 warriors. We brought 200. The humans send 7. Perhaps they do not understand the purpose of the summit, Churix suggested. Perhaps they have nothing worth showing. The human delegation moved through the station's corridors, drawing curious glances from the alien species. They passed. Captain Danny Ruse led the group, a man of average height with dark hair and calm eyes. Behind him walked his squad, Sergeant Kyle Marsh, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head. Corporal Bates Simmons, a lean woman with her hair pulled back tight. Private First Class Tony Vega, young and eager. Private Megan Cruz, quiet and watchful. Private Lucas Grant, tall and serious. And Private Nicole Don, the youngest of them all. They were assigned quarters on Deck 47, far below the levels where the important delegation stayed. The rooms were small and basic. Danny gathered his team in the common area and looked at each of them. You all know why we're here, he said. The coalition thinks we're weak. They think humans don't belong at this summit. We're not here to prove them wrong. We're not here to show off. We're here to train, same as we always do. Understood? Yes, sir. They answered together. Good. PT starts at 500. Get some rest. The next morning, while most of the station still slept, the human squad made their way to the training facility assigned to them. It was a bare room with hard floors and basic equipment. No fancy technology, no combat simulators. Just open space and some weights. Kyle began leading the squad through their morning routine. They started with stretches, then moved into a run. They ran in circles around the room, lap after lap for over an hour. Their breathing grew heavy. Sweat soaked their clothes, but they kept running. A Veli maintenance worker named Pritch was cleaning a nearby corridor when he heard strange sounds coming from the human training room. He moved closer and looked through the observation window. What he saw confused him deeply. Humans were running themselves to exhaustion. One of them, the young female called Nicole, stumbled and fell. Pritch expected the exercise to stop among the Shay when a warrior fell. During training, it meant their body had reached its limit. The training would pause to allow recovery, but Nicole got up. Her legs were shaking, her face was red, and she started running again. Pritch watched for another hour. The humans did not stop. They ran until they could barely stand. Then they dropped to the ground and began doing something called push-ups. They pressed their bodies up and down over and over until their arms gave out. Then they rested for exactly 2 minutes and started again. The Vichy worker did not understand. This was not training, this was self-destruction. Why would any species deliberately push themselves past the point of failure? What possible purpose could it serve? He reported what he saw to his supervisor, who mentioned it to a Krenian officer, who told Commander Nayak. By midday, word had spread through the station. Humans were doing something strange in their training facility, something that made no sense to anyone who heard about it. Nia decided to see for herself. She made her way to Deck 47 and found a small crowd already gathered outside the human training room. Thornaki, Velshi, Morith, and others stood watching through the windows with expressions of confusion. Inside, the humans were still training. It had been 6 hours. They were performing combat drills now, striking padded targets with their hands and feet. Their knuckles were raw and bleeding. Their bodies moved with obvious exhaustion, yet they continued, following the commands of their sergeant, pushing through what should have been impossible limits. Nia watched Private Tony VGA collapse during a sprinting drill. He fell hard, his body simply giving out. Then he rolled over, vomited onto the floor, wiped his mouth, and stood back up. He rejoined the drill, thought the Cthini commander felt something she had not experienced in many years. She did not know what to call it. It was not fear exactly, it was something else. Something that told her she was watching a kind of warrior she had never encountered before. The galaxy's strongest fighter stood in silence, watching humans train, and none of them could explain what they were seeing. The main arena of Varith Prime could hold 50,000 spectators. On the day of the human demonstration, every seat was filled. Warriors from across the galaxy packed the observation galleries, their eyes fixed on the empty floor below. Giant screens floated above the arena, ready to show close-up views of whatever was about to happen. Commander Nia Crash sat in the front row of the Krenian section. Beside her, Gorthik the Thornaki had claimed a space large enough for 5 normal-sized beings. Churik the Veli perched on a railing, his forearms folded with anticipation. Sivax the Morith coiled in a specially designed seating area, her scales glittering under the arena lights. Crowd fell silent as a door opened at the far end of the arena. Captain Danny Ruse walked out first, followed by his squad of 6. They looked small on the vast arena floor. Their plain gray training clothes seemed dull compared to the colorful ceremonial armor worn by other species. They carried no weapons. They wore no protection. Danny stopped in the center of the arena and looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. He did not seem nervous. He did not seem impressed. He simply waited until he had everyone's attention. Thank you for this opportunity, he said, his voice amplified throughout the arena. You have asked to see how humans train. We will show you what you are about to watch is a standard stress inoculation exercise. This is how we prepare our soldiers for combat. He stepped back and nodded to Sergeant Kyle Marsh. Kyle immediately began barking orders. The humans spread out across the arena floor and started running, not jogging. Running full speed. The crowd watched in confusion. This was it. Running, the Veli could run 10 times faster. What was the point? But the humans did not stop after a minute or 5 minutes or 10. They ran for 30 minutes at full speed, their breathing growing ragged, their legs beginning to shake. Some of the alien observers started to understand this was not about speed. This was about duration. The humans were emptying their energy reserves. Deliberately, when Kyle finally called a halt, the squad was gasping for air. Their faces were red and dripping with sweat. They looked like they might collapse at any moment. Instead, Kyle shouted another command. Puzzle stations go. Tables had been set up around the arena, each containing a complex mechanical puzzle. The humans staggered to the tables and began working on the puzzles with shaking hands. They had to think while exhausted. They had to solve problems while their bodies screamed for rest. The crowd began murmuring. This was strange. This was not like any training they had ever seen. The puzzles were completed. Kyle shouted again. Buddy, carry, move. The humans paired up. Tony Vega lifted Nicole Dunn onto his shoulders in a carry position. Bait Simmons did the same with Lucas Grant. Megan Cruz carried Kyle himself. Then they ran again, this time carrying their partners across the arena while instructors fired stun rounds at them. From the sides, the stun rounds were not lethal, but they hurt. Each impact caused visible pain. Tony took a round to his back and stumbled. He did not drop Nicole. He kept running. Bait took 2 rounds to her legs and fell to 1 knee. She pushed herself up and continued. Megan absorbed a round directly to her stomach and doubled over. She vomited, adjusted her grip on Kyle and finished the carry. The arena had gone completely silent. 50,000 warriors watched without making a sound. Danny called for the next phase, combat rotation. Simmons and Marsh, Bait and Kyle moved to the center of the arena. They faced each other and raised their hands. Then they began to fight. This was not sparring. This was not practice. They hit each other with full force, holding nothing back. Kyle's fist connected with Bait's jaw, snapping her head to the side. She responded with a knee to his ribs that echoed through the arena. They traded blows back and forth, blood appearing on their faces, their movements growing slower as damage accumulated. Bait took a kick to her forearm. The crack was audible. Her arm bent at an angle that clearly indicated a fracture. The crowd expected her to stop. Among any other species, the fight would be over. Bait looked at her broken arm. She grabbed it with her other hand, manipulated something, and then pulled a bandage from her pocket. In less than 30 seconds, she had created a basic splint. Then she raised her remaining good hand and nodded at Kyle. Continue, she said. They continued. Kyle eventually took Bait down with a choke hold. She tapped his arm 3 times, signaling surrender. He released her immediately. She stood up, shook his hand with her uninjured arm, and stepped back again. Kyle asked, again? Bait confirmed. They fought 2 more rounds. By the end, both of them were covered in blood and bruises. Bait's broken arm hung at her side, obviously useless. Kyle limped from a damaged knee. Neither of them stopped until Danny finally called an end to the exercise. The 6 Humans gathered in the center of the arena. They stood in the line barely able to remain upright, their bodies showing the evidence of deliberate destruction. Danny walked in front of them, facing the crowd. This is how humans train, he said. We do not train to avoid pain, we train to function. Through pain, we do not train to prevent failure, we train to continue after failure. We do not train to win, we train to endure. Chirek the Veli leaned forward and called out a question. How do you know when the training is complete? Danny looked up at the Vichy with calm eyes. The training is complete when there is nothing left that can break them. The arena remained silent for a long moment. Then Gorth the Thornaki began striking his massive hands together in what served as applause among his species. Others joined. The sound grew until the entire arena thundered with the acknowledgement of 50,000 warriors. Commander Nyakrash did not applaud. She sat very still, her clawed hands gripping the armrests of her seat. She was looking at the humans in a new way. Now she had spent her entire life believing that strength came from natural advantages, claws, armor, venom, speed. The humans had none of these things, but they had something else, something she was only beginning to understand. They had the ability to take everything the universe could throw at them and simply refuse to stop. Their bodies could be broken, their minds could be exhausted, their spirits could be crushed, and they would get up and keep fighting anyway. Nia realized she was afraid, not of the humans as they were now, but of what they might become, what they might already be becoming. Species that trained itself to be unbreakable was a species that could eventually challenge anyone. The demonstration was over, but its effects were only beginning. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again.